by Riverside FM. Powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to Do Good Work Podcast, hosted by Terrell Strayhorn and Jaquan Johnson. We specialize in taking a deep dive into issues that truly matter. Each episode unpacks the challenges and opportunities facing today's leaders, from classrooms to boardrooms, offering insights that inspire real change. By redefining success, we're changing lives, empowering people everywhere to create environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging, whether at home, work, or school. So hey, sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we explore the issues shaping our futures, one meaningful conversation at a time. Let's go!
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Do Good Work Podcast, where we talk about real issues that impact people's lives. I'm your co-host, Terrell Strayhorn, joined by my co-host and friend,
Jaquan Johnson. How are you all?
Hope everyone is doing well, feeling great despite all that's going on in the world. We're going to get into it, but happy Saturday to you. Hope you're enjoying your weekend, starting to warm up across the nation in certain places. And so we're here and we've got a jam-packed show for you, real solid episode, but we want to certainly kick off with a few announcements and acknowledgments. So many of you, whether you're tuning in from within the states, outside this United States or not, know that this has been a lot's going on this week. And we have had both a tragic plane accident, collision between an American Airlines plane and a military jet at Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C., followed by the very next day, a crash of a military sort of med jet near a mall in Philly. So our team here at Do Good Work wants to pause for a moment of silence for all of those whose families and lives were impacted by the loss of life. We thank you for that, and love and light to all of those, not just the families and the victims, but also, when these kinds of things happen, it impacts children, co-workers, church members, community members, neighbors. And so we were working on something this week, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, that after tragedy, it takes a lot of work to restore community and belonging. And so we certainly want to send our very best to people there. All right, so let's get into tonight's show. What do we want to talk about tonight?
First, we have to do what we always do. Starting with your last name, how is your week going?
Starting with the first letter of my last name, it has been a very, I would say I'm thinking about how it's not so much my week, but I am thinking in this moment and have been thinking today about simple things like, that we take for granted, that you wake up in the morning, that you get to your destination.
Truth.
That, a friend of mine is flying out today, and, it's a small, simple thing. There's another word, S word, small, right? So I reached out to say, hey, did you make it? And we should do that all the time, but I'm particularly mindful of it right now, given all that's happening in the aviation industry. So simple, small habits and check-ins go a long way. And so anybody who's listening in the listening audience, I'd encourage you, hey, check on your people, check on them. It doesn't have to be a long conversation or a long text, just small and simple habits go a long way in making sure that everyone's staying safe. What about you? First letter of your
Mine is
last name.
easy. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was driving to Kentucky last night, and jitters. All the things that are going on in this world. I'm not a person who usually, I don't define myself or see myself as anxious often or worried. But I was scrolling through, I think, Twitter, and one of TMZ posted an image of the flight attendant who tragically died in the plane crash in, I think, DC. And I was like, wow, I think I recognize that face. And it was, I flew with the guy. He was my flight attendant. And it immediately just brought me back of how often you and I, travel in the air. And, how, like you said, we can take things for granted. And I think I just sat in the car for a while just thinking about, how blessed I am. How there are so many moving parts in the world that's going on at one time. So much tragedy is happening, and like you said, being more intentional with the people that are in my circle, people that I know, and checking in on them more often. So I think right now and at this time, a lot of jitters.
Yeah. It's we were talking about this earlier, so it's unusual to have two, for all intents and purposes, plane crashes, right, in the same week. Contrary to what most people might be thinking and feeling right now, we don't have many plane crashes in the United States, but there are some. And if you do the research, I was sort of wrapping up the day and started looking around. There are only about one or two airlines that have quite a few of these. And on top of that, it's not only the number of airline crashes that they have, but also the number of people whose lives are lost. And so just thinking about, it is a time that right now, with so much going on, and we're going to get into it in the episode, so much going on that you can easily, start to feel anxious and nervous and worried. And there are lots of places we can get inspiration and hope from. But I was scrolling through Twitter and or X, and I noticed that Pastor Joel Osteen wrote the other day, reminded us of a scripture from Christian scripture, but I mean, it's probably in lots of world religions, the sentiments of it. And it's be anxious in nothing, but in everything, with prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and mind. And so he was calling out on social media the be anxious in nothing part. And he had lots of people who were like, thank you, Pastor Joel. Thank you, Pastor Joel. But it's that and the peace for me. So I responded. I liked it, but I responded to it and was like, and it's that second part. And so I feel special because, folks on his thread like my little post. But
okay,
to anyone
go ahead, friend.
To anyone who's feeling anxious or jittery, right? Be anxious in nothing. We will prevail, and so too will justice, so too will love, so too will light. And we're gonna get into it. And I see some folks who are in the chat. So if you are tuning in on whichever platform, feel free to join us. Use the first letter of your last name and tell us what your word is. So we got a caller who said, or a listener who said, humble is their word.
I like that.
Appreciate that. So, okay, everybody drop it in your chat so we can put you on the screen too. All right, so let's get into it, because I know you've got to, if y'all find him looking at his watch, it's because he's trying to get somewhere. He got to get to a game, go to the screen and watch a game and all those kind of things. So we said we would kick off talking about some of the things that are happening in the world. So we're here in this second week, not even fully second week and a half after the transfer of power, new administration in office. Lots of executive orders were signed into law. No, I'm sorry. That is not true. That is not true. Listening audience, do not quote that. They were not signed into law. Executive orders are not the law. Wasn't planning on saying that, but I'm glad I slipped up, because we got to remember that is not what executive orders are. They are executive orders. They come from the president. They are, you know, sort of guidance about how federal agencies can administer the law, but they do not change the law. Congress is the one who passes law. Courts and judges interpret the law. So we got to go always back to high school social studies and civics to remind ourselves that, don't be fooled. Just because these things happen, they don't necessarily change our current protections. But let's get into which one you want to talk about first.
Man, the first one we have to go with, I guess, gender ideology. That
Okay.
this, executive order, I believe it was 31st, so maybe 3 or 4 days ago, stating that it recognizes only two sexes, male and female, which I believe, based on what we read together, it has some negative implications for the LGBTQ plus community. One being that it will discharge qualified service members based on their gender identity. And we're going to lose one. There's going to be a lot of people in that want to serve our country but cannot, just based on their gender, not on skill, not on competence, not on experience, not anything else, not on merit, right? But because of their gender. And I think that simply just tells them who we want in our military and who we do not want in our military.
Yeah.
I think, so we're discharging some folks. I think it also has some negative implications for people who are, currently transgender or non-binary in the military and have to use the bathroom with other males, which could, cause a lot of issues as well, especially
Sort of.
morale.
Well, in violence, there are several pieces to this. I think one, which I put on social media the other day, that, despite what we might be listening to and witnessing in politics, let's be clear, there's no conflict between merit and identity. Black and merit, Black and excellence can coexist. There are incredible, outstanding, high achieving people in every single identity category. And so this idea that we've got to stop paying attention to identity and focus to merit, it's a political ploy, I think. It's also trying to divide a nation through words. And so people will start getting behind merit, because who doesn't, think that people who deserve something shouldn't get it. But let's not be fooled. As I said on social media, they are not antonyms, right? You can be poor and rich and incredible. You can be living with disabilities or wealth of abilities and still accomplished. And we've just got to, as a nation, despite what we're being told, hang on to that. And I think even when it comes to the issue of gender, this is a divisive issue. I think that there will be some who can get with many aspects of diversity and multiculturalism and inclusion, who will struggle with this particular issue, because gender identity is complicated, it's complex, and it's not just a political issue. It sometimes falls out to be a religious issue. It sometimes falls out to be a race and a cultural issue. And I think one of the things that our work and the belonging work brings to the fore is, if we can just appreciate that every single person who's alive and breathing is a human, right? Let's drop all the other labels for a moment. We're humans. Can we agree that each and every one of us in this country, given our creed and our founding documents, deserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
Man, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to share the story what I shared with you earlier today. So I'm at a little gathering in Kentucky, and Kentucky is a conservative state, right? And we had a really interesting conversation about gender ideology and how it impacts our military. And I shared a little bit about, not too much about, and these people are from like coal mining and sales, and some are in higher education, some are not in education, but all conservative males. And I was sharing about, regardless of, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, everyone wants to feel a sense of belonging. That is, we want to be respected, right? You want to be accepted. You want to be welcome. You want to be cared about. The list goes on, and they all are shaking their head. Yeah. I mean, I can get with that. I can get with that. But I was like, what about, the LGBTQ plus community, right? Shouldn't they also be respected, accepted? And, although they have their beliefs about that group, one thing they we all could agree on is they should. They deserve that as well, just like I deserve it, just like you deserve it. And even, like I said, at first I thought that conversation was going to go sideways. I didn't think it was going to, be kumbaya by the end, but
Right.
it was just, man, I remember I called you elated, because I was like, at the end of the day, it was such a good conversation to hear those people, although I know they disagree with, people who live that life. One thing they can respect is that they do deserve to feel belonging in this world.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to, we have to talk about it, right? Because regardless of people's perspective on the issues, I mean, as an educator, I'm in schools and colleges, universities, speaking on platforms where my audience, I don't get to decide who the audience is. They come from all different walks of life. And what I have learned is, how to honor and respect and own my own experience, my own beliefs. I tell people, and even in my classroom, like I just quoted on this podcast about Joel Osteen, if I use that in the classroom, I tell people, like, listen, I'm a man of faith. I identify as a Christian. That's not saying that you have to. And that's not dismissive. I really respect world religions and the diversity of religions that we have in this world. But just as much as I should feel free and safe to practice my religion, I want other people to feel safe and protected, because the moment, I'm quoting Martin Luther King, I don't know, we're what, a week and a half after MLK Day, but a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That if, we oppress one group, we have to be very, very careful and mindful, because before you know it, but for time, it'll be us. And so I think with this particular executive order, defending women, that's an interesting title, from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth, there will be some who will, quite frankly, be drawn to some of the language in it. But I'm hoping that we can all, as fellow brothers, sisters, people, citizens, especially in this country, think about what democracy is about, and come to agree that no one should be harmed and hurt and treated with mistreated intentionally and systematically, because tucked in this, it threatens to ban medical attention to those who are already in transitioning care. So regardless of your sort of thoughts about it, it puts people, I mean, you can't start hormone therapy and then just stop in the middle of it. That is life threatening. It is dangerous, and people will be harmed. And so I think anything that's going to, hurt people, harm people, kill people, is the antithesis of what I think we're about in democracy. And so we just got to think through it. I mean, these proposals are clearly designed to create chaos and confusion. It's what we saw with the, what is it, federal freeze? I mean, like, to ban
come
or to
on.
threaten, you're going to freeze all the
And
money.
then what was it like a day? The next day, you
Well,
rescind?
the afternoon or something, the evening of, a judge stalled it and was going to pause it until 2 days from now, and then the next day you rescind it. But look what you've done. You've upended all of education. People are nervous. People are worried. And as we said on the episode 16 the other night, we should be. We should be, because I don't think that that's the last we're going to see of those kinds of actions.
Correct.
Executive actions. I think we have to start to anticipate these kinds of moves and to figure out what will we do to ensure. I mean, for us, right? We call it do good work. What's good work? People often ask. Good work for us is similar to the spirit of what the late John Lewis talks about. It's making sure that even the least among us have what they need. You know, threatening to close the Department of Education is not just a political move. It threatens to cut off access to, and get it. I mean, people say, well, no, that's not included. I mean, did you write the executive order? If you didn't write it, well, they say have several seats and let's sit down and talk about it. I'm not saying it rude. I'm saying let's sit down and talk about it.
Listen, I mean, some people who work for the White House can't even answer those questions.
Including, bless her heart, the press secretary, who said, well, I think Medicare might, but Medicaid not. Okay, so, but to the average American, do they realize how many single moms and single dads and low income, white and people of color depend on Medicaid for their health care? How many depend on, federal dollars for rental assistance so they have a place to lay their head at night? They depend on, we talked about this in the last episode, they depend on, federal aid. I was just saying this to a mom last night, for their kids to have free and reduced lunch. And the mom literally said, without free and reduced lunch, like, her kid's losing weight.
Come on,
kids.
Let's go there. Let's go there. Let's go there. Yeah, come on, somebody. So I know a lot of educators too, right, in K-12 space, and they listen to our podcast. We did it on a Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday, episode 16, and so many of them were saying thank you because they didn't realize it. And one of them made a comment that you and I talked about was they care so much about those kids. They know they need food in order to learn. And some of them said, I will use my own money to make sure my kids eat, my students eat. Mm-hmm. All right. So now we're creating a disparity. Okay. There are some teachers who have a spouse or have, support that, they can afford more food or better, healthier options versus a mother who has 3 kids at home and is doing it by themselves, but also want to make sure that her students eat at school. Yep. Right. So now you have students looking at like, wait, we only had Pop-Tarts and you guys had pancakes and syrup. Yep. So, these are kids. That's hard for them to kind of understand, like, what is going on and why do you get pancakes, but I only get a Pop-Tart?
Well, here's the other thing. We know this. We don't have this share the screen and show you a model. Sense of belonging is a basic need. It's a human right. Everybody wants to belong. Everybody wants to feel like they matter. Everyone wants to know that their contributions are significant, right? And it is part of sort of our basic hierarchy of needs. More fundamental than belonging is air. You got to have air to breathe and live. Water, contrary to the fact that I don't like white water. I like, putting drops in my water.
Well,
I don't like clear water.
Not lately now, friend. Not lately. You've been drinking water.
I've been doing a little bit better,
you.
That's because I'm thirsty. But I mean, I normally put drops in my water, right? But water, we got to have water. And water is not just, the liquid. we often talk in our workshops with folks about watering your soul, watering your mind. You got to rinse your mind. You can't just, consume all this news that's coming in, because it's nothing but bad news all the time. And people, listen, it's what, winter. We have worked with some educators who suffer from SAD, seasonal affective disorder,
Hmm.
who then consume all of this bad news and find themselves slipping into anxiety and depression. Sometimes you've got to pull away. You have to practice self-care. That's important. You've got to rinse your mind with good stuff. Read a novel, listen to some good music, go for a walk, talk to a friend or family member, read a motivational book, something that will give you, that will water your soul. Air, water, food. You got to eat. And here's the thing, belonging matters. It is the key to educational success. Students who feel a sense of belonging do better in school, they do better in college, they do better at work, they do better in life. But it is hard to pay attention to the teacher. I don't care if they're as exciting and engaging as us on stage or us in a room after we've had a good cup of coffee and a good conversation. It's hard to pay attention when you're hungry.
Hmm.
It's hard to pay attention when you're tired. And so we have to think about these proposals, whether they're coming through the executive orders or elsewhere, because I do think the strategies will start to change a bit, to understand, they undermine the success of our nation. They undermine the development and the well-being of our communities. They target certain groups against each other groups, and they create these conflicts, these social conflicts that we don't need in a democracy. And then most importantly, they sort of negatively impact our most vulnerable, in this case, kids.
And I think the executive order, I don't quote me, but I believe it says something about along the lines of working for the people. And these executive orders looking like it's working for some people, but not all people. And I think that, as you said, we have to be careful of, he has to be careful what he's putting out there and what he's signing, because they really do impact people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the most vulnerable population is being impacted the most. Especially when we just talked about, kids not having a meal. Some students go to school just to eat. If we're taking that away from them, then, I think that's going to also kind of feed into the crisis we have with students not going to school.
Yeah. And we already have that for anybody who's listening, right? We chronic absenteeism is already a problem in schools. And now we're going to have it even more if, one, we're taking away, free and reduced lunch. We're taking away school breakfast programs. We'd be threatening to take away Title I grants, which provide more opportunities for students to learn, before and after school programs. These are essential. And by the way, childcare, again, most people are going to say, well, wait, he proposed that in the federal freeze. The judge stalled it, and then they rescinded it. Please, no. Please, sir. Please, ma'am. Please, persons, know that someone somewhere is right now working on the next iteration of that. I think one of the sort of must be strategies for this second time around is like, stay in the media. Do something every day. Like today, there were SWIFT tariffs imposed on several countries. We've already heard from some of those countries about what that means. I mean, it's just like constantly something happening that's changing the very nature of how we do things. And so you have to be mindful. I know we want to get into what we said, the some more of the DEI. You said it right. For anybody who needs to know this, because I know we both have been watching people's posts on social media, and people are free to post whatever they want to post. It's a free country. But some people have said, they think that this is a hoax. It's not real. Nothing's really happening. Why are y'all talking about it? What did that guy say the other night? And we appreciated it because it is what we need to hear.
Yeah.
Hypotheticals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is all hypothetical. Well, let me share that one of my fraternity brothers shared with me that he was a chief diversity officer. Shared with me that, his institution, a public institution, has decided that it will anticipate, right? It's sort of following the spirit of the executive order, but it will anticipate that something coming down the pike that will stop it. So they've gotten rid of chief diversity officers roles, which means he has no job. And I was on the phone with him yesterday, I think it was, and he was able to name another 15 chief diversity officers who have no job as of yesterday. And he helped us also think about the fact that these are us, men and women. Many of them Black and brown, not because of DEI hiring, but because if you're really going to try to move the needle on your institution's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion prior to January 20th, 2025, you were looking for subject matter experts, people who had been there, knew what to do, and people who had subject matter expertise, training, lived experience that they could draw upon, and a plan for how to enact new policies, programs, and practices that would create more welcoming environments, that would sort of erect pathways into your institution and through your institution. You were looking for these experts, and many of them were Black and brown. And now they don't have jobs. And so, if anyone tells you it's not real, tell them that's not true. Now, everybody who's losing their job is not Black and brown. Don't let anyone tell you that. There are lots of white folk who are also chief diversity officers whose jobs and livelihood are being threatened. And the reason why I'm getting animated about it is because he helped me remember some of these, their moms, their dads, their aunties, their uncles, they have children in college, they have aging parents they're taking care of. Some of them are living with pre-existing health conditions, and they do not have jobs. And depending on what their institution offers them, they have no income and no benefits. So to anyone who's our listening audience, one of the things that we're trying to do here at Do Good Work is help, reposition these individuals and get them back into the workforce. And so we've committed to writing letters of nomination for them to get jobs. We have committed to writing letters of reference and recommendation for those that we know. Many of them have brought us to their institutions and their campuses to do this important work prior to January 20th. And so if you know of jobs, if you're hiring, if you know of positions, please reach out to us, jump in our DMs, drop them in the chat, reach out, because there are many, many more, friends, but there are 15 or 16 that are close to our heart that we're trying to help. And it's going to take that kind of action for us to get there. What do you think?
These are highly skilled individuals, though, that we know. Who have a proven track record of, designing programs and initiatives that help students succeed and thrive, not just, get through day to day. And I know, one in particular who is very adamant about serving students and making sure they get the proper care and resources that they need to be successful. These individuals work hard. They take their job very seriously, and right now they're displaced because they've been pretty much fired from a job that is near and dear to their heart. It's unfortunate because at the end of the day, our institutions need people like them on our campus and need them to do the work that they do on those campuses, because we know day in, day out, there are issues of discrimination, harassment, racism, and the list goes on. And who do we turn to? We normally turn to them. So it's, again, what do we do in the future?
Well, I think we could level set too, right? Let's just keep a couple of them in mind. So, because I think people often think a DEI officer or vice president for diversity, all they know is diversity. No. These are, as you said, these are good people and they're talented administrators. They're experienced professionals who have skills and a track record in planning, programming, curriculum development, budget and finance. These are transferable skills. Many of them were supervising teams. They're managers. They have management skills. They have, like you said, they're student advocates. So if you're looking for You don't have to be looking for a DEI officer or a DEI person to hire a DEI. I think that's the other thing, is that this narrative of DEI has gotten so convoluted and confusing that people think the only thing that DEI people do are DE and I,
Mm-hmm.
but
Nothing else.
no, it's nothing else. I mean, in fact, one of the diversity officers we're talking about, we didn't even go to his campus for a DEI event. We were actually there because he was committed to a student success event. Many of them are cabinet members. So if you're looking for a person who knows something about the C-suite, right? These are the folks for it. Some of them have backgrounds in health and social work and education and psychology, theology. I mean, there are lots of different backgrounds and portfolios. Just, I'm glad we're getting ready. We're helping to sort of break up that monolithic narrative, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that they do more than DEI. And I think that's, people, I guess, in higher education and that person's administration gives them credit for only DEI work. And that's all they can do, which is not true. Right. You listed a number of things, of other things that they can do that are transferable to different roles and titles.
Yeah. It takes talking about it, because if not, I think people are quick to see something on TikTok or see something on X, and they just believe it, hook, line, and sinker. And your background is in teaching, so too is mine. We were both classroom teachers. And many times when people bring us to speak, or we have opportunity to do workshops, or weren't you speaking to some students yesterday, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was the talk about, and how did it go?
It went well.
And how many of my quotes did you steal?
I think I took, maybe 27 and a half. I tweaked one of them.
Okay, that's fair.
But it was about simply just being a college student, hanging on to the rope, especially around all the things that are happening right now in higher education. What can they do as students to be steadfast in their education? Some of their rights as students to use their voice. It went well. It was a good discussion. I think, students today, we don't give them enough credit because, a lot of them say that they're not college ready, but these students they have good questions. Mm-hmm. They have solid questions. They just want to know, they need someone to, guide them through the process. This was a freshman group that, they're worried about what's going to happen at their institution, and just a space to talk about it. With someone.
Worried about what, in terms of like these things we're talking about today?
In terms of the Black Student Center being removed, LGBTQ space being eliminated. They think now that we have a new administration, they're going to experience an uptick in discrimination and harassment, and they know that Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. But how do we go high? We're always forced to go high. Can I go low for once? And that was a really good discussion, because I'm working through that myself. So I was honest with them, right? As a classroom educator, when I went through school, they always say, like, be honest with your students, and I had to let them know that that's something that I'm working on as well. But this is a quote I stole. I don't know. I mean, I heard it from you, but it really came from Martin Luther King. But darkness can't push out darkness. Only light can. Yeah. So that was a 27 and a half.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fair enough. That you even paraphrased it there, but it is a beautiful quote from Martin Luther King that bears repeating, right? And it's. I was telling this reporter from higher ed paper that reached out and wanted to know, like, how institutions are responding to the executive order. And after what I always say, I'm going to give these reporters like no more than 15 minutes. And then an hour into talking, I'm like, Lord have mercy, I done said too much again. Not too much in the sense of like I overspoke, but it's just there's so much to share. But I was talking about all the things we've been talking about, and she said, well, is there anything that you want to add? And I felt the weight of all that we had talked about. Much like you said, I mean, I felt jittery, I felt kind of heavy, and I was like, wait a minute. That is exactly what all of this is designed to do, to make us all feel bad about ourselves, feel bad about the world, feel like things are out of control, that we don't have, we're not the master of our own fate, that there is no hope, and that we should all kick rocks. And I was like, there actually is something I want to add, and that is that despite everything that is going on, and I quote Martin Luther King, I firmly believe that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. I like, using illustration. So
Bring them out.
if I turn these lights off, I don't even know if I can. Look, I go away. The only thing that can bring me back is light. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. So, I know you said it because it's the mission and vision of Do Good Work, but no, the students can't go low. None of us can afford to go low. We cannot allow the low to bring us low. If that's the case, low wins. But darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And I believe that light illuminates. I believe that truth triumphs. And I firmly believe that love wins. In the end, now, what happens between now and then, there's a whole lot we're going to cover. There's a whole lot we're going to have to double down on our commitments to. We've been saying this a lot to people, and this gets us into another issue, school safety. But we have to denounce bad stuff.
Every time.
It's not the time to just say, that's not nice. I don't have to name the person, but to take a national tragedy and before you do an investigation to imply that it had to do with DEI hiring, that is unacceptable. That is inappropriate. That is, wicked. It is irresponsible. It is a miscarriage of the seat and of justice. I'll keep going. You know what I'm saying? We have to put some words to it. And you know what I said? I think we have to get fluent, practice it. If you don't say it to someone, say it to yourself in front of the mirror. We got to get fluent and practice. How do we denounce these behaviors? We've said this on this show before. People. Okay, so we do a lot of research nowadays on a lot of different students, including students with disabilities. And it's hard to do this kind of work advocating for students' rights, people's rights, really, and then, go around and to use ableist language, right? Y'all listening in, this is like a conversation between two friends, right? We stop saying that's crazy.
Literally. We stopped saying blind review.
Yeah. Or turn a blind eye. No, and it wasn't easy. We had to call each other out and then we had to come up with replacements for it. But now, because we've done it, we don't say why, because that's ableist language. There are people who suffer from visual disabilities. And when we use that kind of language, it dismisses their humanity. It reduces the significance and the seriousness of their condition. And it also makes people who are living with mental health issues and mental health challenges, it just perpetuates these stereotypes that are vicious and hurtful and harmful, that label some groups as broken and deficient, and then somehow privileges all of us to be able, capable, and strong. And so we've stopped. And so for that reason,
listen, you literally said denounce, though. I think that's what we're doing. Oh, wow. We're literally doing it in our writing, right? We're denouncing all of those stereotypes. We are very intentional about, we're calling out ableist language, able-bodied, and the like in our writing, because it's unacceptable that every time we talk about students with disabilities, we talk about the things that they don't do. Yeah. But we see in our research, there are multiple things that they do, and they do it well. And that deserves, a space in the literature for other researchers to look at and read, or other practitioners and scholars to, we read time and time again all the things that disability students are broken, they are incompetent, they don't graduate on time, they don't graduate at all. Stop all that mess.
Yeah.
And let's look at the other side of it.
You start asking yourself, where do we get this idea that they were fill in the blank, broken, incomplete, incompetent, dangerous, right? It starts through words. And so we have to ask ourselves, what do I mean? When we do this, they're crazy. No. We should stop that behavior because, all we got to do is go back a couple years and they had language for everybody. They had language for left-handed folks. And so we demonize them. We demonize African Americans. That's what we do, is we create divisions. And so if we are going to be one nation united, then we're going to have to work harder at coming together, which is exactly a great segue, right? That's what good work is in many ways. Do good work. It's unifying instead of dividing.
Mhm.
It's building people up instead of tearing them down. It's fostering community rather than division and despair. So, this past week, there was a school shooting. Was it this past week or last week? School shooting in Antioch, Tennessee. And one of my line brother's wife, who's an elected official, is doing good work in the Nashville area with the community there. And we were thinking about how our work in belonging could really be helpful to that school, that district, and many others that have been impacted by gun violence and issues of school safety. So we put together this little handout that we're going to, circulate in next week's social media path. But here's the thing we got to know is that safety is important.
Yeah.
Not just in schools, at work, at home. Last night when I was in the gym watching the news about the Philly plane crash, they talked about the number of cars and houses that were set on fire because of the plane. You could be walking down the street and, have your safety disrupted. Safety is important. Security is important, but it's not just physical safety and security that matters. We talk a lot in our work. Also, the belonging model calls out emotional safety, psychological safety, financial security. All of those are important components as well. People feel a sense of belonging when they feel safe and secure, when they feel physically safe and secure, but also financially safe and secure, which is why what's happening to chief diversity officers and others who are losing their jobs across the country because of this political moment is not just unfortunate, it is inequitable and unfair, because it means that it's hard to feel a sense of belonging in this capitalist society when you don't have income, you don't have a job, you don't have a way to make your ends meet. And I think as I was looking through that document we put together, I was thinking about how, a threat to your safety in one sort of space has a ripple effect and can threaten your safety in other spaces, right? So these students in Antioch, Tennessee,
Mhm.
who have experienced this, and the teachers and the staff, right? Then you got to go back home and feel safe and secure. And you have to go around the community, whether it's to church or to the library or to the grocery store, and try to restore community safety and security, right? And that can be difficult and hard. So, I like telling stories. This is a not so great story, but when I lived in Columbus, Ohio, I lived, I think, at 2 or 3 different places. One of the places I lived is called German Village. Love this little neighborhood. And I remember one day I was going out to my car. I had some sort of truck, maybe an Explorer or something at that. No, I think a Pathfinder. Anyway, I went out to my truck, and as I was approaching, I was like, geez, this happens to me like 3 or 4 times in my life. I was like, man, my windows are really clean, because that window looks like it's not even there. And as I approached my truck, I realized that's because the window was not there. Someone had broken into my truck. And as I peered inside and saw all the shattered glass on the floor, if anybody's ever had your car broken into, it is such a violation of your sense of safety and security and your rights. So I'm getting into the truck. I'm trying to see, what do I remember having in here? What's missing? And they took everything. They took my GPS. They took my radio. They did not take any of my music. They hate my taste in music because they left everything on the floor. Every single CD or whatever I had, podcast, iPod, whatever it was there. But everything else they took. All right, so that was my truck. I got the window fixed. They took the glass out of the truck, everything. Basically, they restored my truck back to condition. That night, I will remember being in my house, and for the first time, I was, would you say, jittery? I was afraid. Like, violating my rights in my truck had a ripple effect and made me feel unsafe in my own home. Why am I saying this? Some of the executive orders also threaten deportation to, immigrant youth and immigrant children and immigrant families. And we were teaching, what was it, Thursday night, and one of our students who's a teacher in the school said that they're literally doing raids in her school and threatening to take little kids away from their parents, from their teachers. And it has a ripple effect. That it's not just about what happens in schools. It's also impacting what happens in homes and what's happening in communities. And of course, at the larger, I've been talking, come on,
that was I'm glad you segued there. I was going to go there. And, that was a really good conversation in class that night that, we see it in the executive order, but our students are sharing with us that, no, it's really happening. And the students shared that a lot of the parents who are here legally are still petrified that someone's going to come into the school and remove their kids from school and take them away.
Yeah.
And that she's like, and the student, they don't even want to send their students to school.
That's right.
They
so
literally called the school and said that I don't want to send my child to the school because I'm afraid something's going to happen to them. Someone's going to take my baby away from me without
a place
me
where kids should feel safe.
They
don't.
Yeah. And then you have students, again, a place where we nurture minds and learning and knowledge, produce knowledge. But, these kids are worried about, will mom and dad be home when I leave school?
Yeah, right. And mom and dad and auntie and uncle are wondering, like, will Junior or Juniorette come home today? And by the way, friends, Roman, countrymen, listen, how much of the science lesson can you listen to and hear and retain when you're worried that you might be taken or that your loved ones might be taken? How much can you let's sort of step into the shoes of the educator. How can you really focus on the curriculum and optimize making the lesson interesting when you're actually worried about the safety and security of your students? And as she said, without giving too much, you have to worry about who you can even trust in your schools. Because every teacher does not think the same about these issues. It's what we're sort of wrapping up where we began. These issues are problematic and they're challenging, which is why we have to open up. We can't keep secrets. We got to talk about it. We got to have spirited debates. We have to have civil discourse. We can disagree without being disagreeable, but we've got to talk about these things as a nation, as a community, as professionals, because if I tell you, hey, in my class I'm doing this, but you feel differently about the issue of immigration than I do, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and
hit up one of these anonymous reporting sites and tell on me, and all my kids going to be gone.
Distrust in the school system, right? Like you may have more students that you have to worry about, but you can't share with your colleague because you don't know how your colleague feels, right? Because if I share with my colleague, hey, I have something in place if they come to the school. And we already know, I think you and I shared it via text to each other, a screenshot of, I think a teacher in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, tweeted out, pretty much praying that ICE comes to their school and that they have illegal immigrants there, and the address. It's it's mind-boggling that these things are happening, and that, as a teacher, we always talk about, being a part of a team, and being respectful to teammates and keeping them included. But it's hard to do that when you don't know if you can trust the person to your left and to your right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think about it, all it's doing, which I think a lot of these actions right now are doing, just seeding distrust. It's seeding mystery and confusion, chaos, so that we can play our cards close to our chests, which keeps us divided. And, we all know, divided, we fall. And so we have to do a better job. And I see hello to John, and hello to Leilise, and hello to everybody. Use the chat. If you have questions for us, we're going to wrap up our episode. But if you have questions for us, and also if you have ideas about things that people can do, or advice about how we sort of make it through this period, drop it in the chat. We'll share it on the screen for folks. But, I'm thinking about the fact that one sort of outgrowth, right, of these actions over the last week and a half is we have seen quite a bit of advocacy and activism. So I want to go back to something you said, and then I want to give a couple of examples. So you said you were talking to the students, and the students were feeling some kind of way, or the students were, sort of feeling overwhelmed, if I'm using the right language, but had ideas about what they could do. And we're wondering, like, can you ever go low? Did you have students who knew and had ideas about how they could use their voice?
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, the first idea was Yik Yak, and I was like, probably not. But a lot of them were saying that they wanted to write to the president, to the board, to voice their opinion and concerns, to get with student government and have a meeting with them, to talk about some of the things that they're concerned about. Meeting with the dean of students, meeting with their RAs.
Good ideas.
So all of these things, community. Some of them even talked about how we should partner with outside external community members to help support us. All great ideas, and things that they can do. I just encourage them to one, create a plan and make sure you have numbers. One, we need numbers to do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, all great ideas to kind of move forward.
I think the other thing the reason why I was asking is because I was thinking those are great ideas. Talk to your deans of students. When I was vice president for academic and student affairs at Lemoyne Owen College, there was something that erupted on campus, and students wanted to protest, or they wanted to share their perspective on a matter. And they used to call me VP, and they said, "Hey VP, we want to do this, but some faculty said that we're going to get in trouble and we'll get kicked out of school." And so I asked them, I said, okay, get in trouble. Okay, don't know what that was, but technical difficulty in the middle of the episode. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully that didn't affect the live stream. But yeah, they said they really wanted to share their perspective on this thing that was happening on campus, but that some people said, "Wait, my background is gone." Oh, that's awesome. I was hoping that would go away. But they wanted to share their perspective, and some faculty said they would get in trouble. And I said, "Get in trouble with who?" And they said, "Well, they said we're going to get kicked out of school by you." And I said, "I have no intention of kicking you out of school for sharing your voice, but it's not even me. You have a dean of students, first of all, and you have a director of student activities. You got multiple layers before you get to me." I say this because students often have the most power to mobilize, to share their voice, to let their perspectives be heard. Of course, you want to be civil. You want to be nonviolent. I think to the extent you can, you want to be appropriate and non-disruptive. But if you have something you want to say, you should do it. Now, this, of course, leads into, the reason why I was asking is because I think lots of students I've been talking to want to, I don't know, storm somebody's office or tear down something on the campus. And one, you just shouldn't do that because you'll get in trouble.
Well, you
And this
will
is the
get kicked out
UCLA
then.
student, right?
You will
Like
get
the
kicked out
UCLA
then.
story
Oh,
you
yeah,
sent
yeah,
me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some campuses can respond and react in ways that will silence. And so to all of our administrative leaders who listen to the podcast, hopefully we can create safe spaces where our students can experience democracy and have their voices heard and activate their advocacy without, compromising their degree plans. Even if they're saying things that call us to the carpet. Because as a campus leader myself, I've always appreciated when students could help us see the impact of some of our decisions in ways that we couldn't before.
Yeah, I agree. I think that students must always be civil, appropriate, and go through the proper channels, right? Don't go straight to the president.
Say it again.
Have a little bit of decorum and go through the proper channels. I think that it would go a long way if that happens. I think students that I spoke to the other day understood that. And one, I also, like you said, I hope that school personnel gives them the space to share their voice and their concerns, because at the end of the day, we need our students on our campus. Without them, we wouldn't have jobs. They pretty much, make sure we get paid. So, and we're there to serve them and make sure they have a decent time on our campuses. So, yeah, I agree. I think that one, we have to give them the space, not only give them the space, but opportunity to speak without speaking over them.
Right.
I think that's something else that leaders can do a better job at. I know I've been in spaces where a student will speak. Actually, we had a call with a client, and a student leader was on there, and she was saying that, from her perspective, the campus leadership doesn't want to hear the students' voices.
Right.
And that was sad to hear.
Yeah, because you don't want anyone to feel silenced and unheard. And I think, that's one of the things that's seeming to happen right now, is that all these actions are happening, and the message that it's sending, whether it's intentional or not, we're admitting it or not, is it's erasing people's experiences. I know we're almost at time, we're beyond time, so let's wrap up on this one. It's erasing people's experiences and their histories. It is silencing people's voices, and it's making people afraid, even in democracy, to raise their voice and to air their perspective. So, we would be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge this, that, it's February 1st. Happy Black History Month to all of those who are listening. And Black history is American history. In fact, Black history is world history. That if you're going to ignore Black history, you're going to cut out a major part of world history and American history and US history, all three of them tied together. And so these ideas that somehow we can tell the story of our nation and ignore the contributions of African Americans, Black Americans, and Africans to that evolution is just misguided and wrong. And February was established originally as Negro Education or Negro History Week, and then it became Negro History Month, and now Black History Month. It's the shortest month out of the whole year, but to have a month that we pause and reflect on the contributions of Black Americans and African Americans to society is important. And so, in all that the noise that's being made and all the things that are trending, again, on behalf of the Do Good Work team, we wish you a very happy Black History Month, and that this is the time where not only do we need to just use it as a hashtag and put it in our signatures on our email, but like share Black history, past, present, and future.
I agree. What I want to say is that one, I appreciate these conversations with you. I know many people message us after the show and thank us for it. Times can be dark for some, but this is a perfect opportunity for us to kind of unite and keep moving forward, keep pushing forward, because the world needs us. So many people need us to voice our opinions and voice our concerns and get together to create these, plans and strategies that work. Just because there are a lot of forces that are pushing us out and silencing us doesn't mean that we succumb to that pressure, that noise. This is the opportunity for us to rise and amplify our voices and be even louder. Because at the end of the day, we will overcome some of these challenges that we face. And I look forward to the work that we do together and with others to denounce hate and to speak against things that go against so many people's rights. Because at the end of the day, we all do belong in this world. We all deserve respect. We all deserve to be accepted just the way we are, just as we are. And I encourage you all to do the same work, whether that is at home, in your community, at work, in church, across the nation, to stay motivated. And even when there are times where you feel defeated, find ways to fill your cup.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you got to do it. We got to practice self-care, as we've been saying, and you know, um, yourself. Your body. I went to my doctor a little bit ago, and I forget what I was asking him, but anyway, his point was, Terrell, you know your body. So if you know you feel like you're exhausted, don't push yourself any harder. If you feel like you need to eat something, eat something. And it was just so simple. And I thought to myself, I'm paying you to tell me these practical things that I already know. I could ask Chat GPT that. But I mean, sometimes you do need someone to remind you of the most obvious, and that is this. You know what? We are a resilient nation. We have come through hardship and difficult times. We're a resilient nation, and and each and every one of us. I mean, all you have to do is just look at this last week. I know a lot of people are talking about the executive orders and the federal freeze, but look what happened. The federal freeze was threatened. We mobilized. People activated their base. They reached out to their elected officials. They put things on social media. And before you know it, we created enough noise to where, and a judge who has good sense said, wait a minute, we're going to pause so we can interpret this. And in the middle of it, it was rescinded. I think we learn a lot from that. Mobilize, write your elected officials. There are people who are taking actions against companies that are no longer committed to DEI. Right on, do it. What they say, do it for the vine, do it for everybody. Do these things. So that's how we get their attention, and realize this is the other part, that you're not in this by yourself. There are a lot of people, although sometimes the media doesn't give enough attention to it. There are a lot of people who feel the way that you do, who are on the right side of justice, who are committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, who want women and people of color and people with disabilities to succeed and to thrive in the world, and who want us to be united. And guess what? Here's the thing we got to say: they don't all look like us. We're diverse in our championing of these values, these virtues, these commitments. So just remember that we need to band together. We need to take action together. We need to form coalitions and partnerships not start seeding hate against each other and labeling groups, because you'd be surprised. I know we've all could attest to this. You'd be surprised how many partners and collaborators, and as we say, co-conspirators you have in groups that do not look like you. You know, they don't live where you live. They don't dress like you dress. They may not even speak the same language. It's not their first language, but they are committed to these principles and to these practices. And so as we move on, just stay encouraged. Listen, don't be afraid to do something, but do something good. Do good work. And thank you for tuning in to episode 17. We will see you next week at the same time on the same station. Your co-host, Terrell Strayhorn, signing out with
your boy, J Squared, Jaquin Johnson.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Do Good Work Podcast. We hope you found today's conversation informative, uplifting, and insightful. Don't forget to like and share this episode with your networks. Follow us on social media at Do Good Work on X, formerly Twitter, for real-time updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. Until next time, friends, don't be afraid to do something, but do something good. Do good work.